I'm sure we've all heard the sound of a poor quality analog audio cable or connection. The hum and the buzzing, the hissing and crackling and static. So that's pretty well known and pretty obvious when you encounter that you need to check your cables and your connections. And doing so should fix the problem. But the question I've never really seen answered is, what does a poor quality digital audio connection sound like? Because there's a common expression, although it's grammatically incorrect, that bits is bits. That up to a certain point, digital audio will sound exactly the same until the noise gets so bad or the signal loss gets so severe that it can no longer decode the audio, and then it just drops out and you just get silence. And I'm sure many of us have encountered that from digital audio services such as satellite radio or DAB or HD radio, or even the audio component of digital over-the-air TV. But there's always been some pushback against that theory, especially from people and companies attempting to sell you more expensive equipment that you didn't even know you needed. For example, this catalog here, Audio Advisor, and there's a section where they're attempting to sell you premium coaxial digital cables. They say noise or interference that enters a digital audio cable distorts sound. And this other section here talks about, for digital coaxial audio, speed is critical, not because of how fast, but because time relationships within a digital stream are critical to the reconstruction of the analog waveform that brings music to our ears. And they talk about these cables use superior technology to avoid time-based damage, jitter, within the data package for smooth, clear, three-dimensional sound. So if these people are to be believed, if we're not spending hundreds of dollars on a single cable, we should expect to get distorted sound and rough, cloudy, two-dimensional sound, which is the opposite of what they're saying these cables will deliver. So to test these competing beliefs, I put together this little setup here of an ordinary CD player. It is a Sansui CD-X311 from 1990. It says right there on the front panel it has a digital audio output. It's a coaxial output. And I have my IBM ThinkCentre here set up, and I installed a sound card which has a coaxial digital audio input on it, which is a rather uncommon feature. But you can see the control panel. I actually had to download an unofficial driver that I found on Hydrogen Audio in order to enable this feature. The official drivers do not support recording through the SPDIF input, probably for copyright violation reasons. But this one does. You can see SPDIF input, enable SPDIF in recording. So I have the coaxial digital output of the CD player connected to the coaxial digital input of the sound card. And then the regular line output of the sound card is connected to my speakers. So now if I hit play on the CD player, you can hear the music playing and the level meter going on my computer. This CD is Colors in Motion by Gentle Journey. I believe this was recorded in 1994, and it's a whole lot of Yamaha DX7. If you're a fan of that synthesizer, you'll enjoy this album. So that sounds fine, but I'm only using a very short and rather thick RCA cable here to connect the CD player to the sound card. So what would happen if I use all this mess to connect it instead? The official maximum length for SPDIF digital audio cable connection is 10 meters, or approximately 32 feet. So to begin with, I have this 10-foot RCA cable. And if you've owned a video game console or a home computer in the 1980s, you may recognize this cable as the one that came with it to connect the RF modulator on your TV to the computer or video game console. So not a very high quality RCA cable, but I will start my computer recording and then plug it into the CD player. And we can hear audio and you can see it recording there. So that's working fine. Now I added another cable, so we now have a 10-foot cable coming from the CD player and a 10-foot cable coming from the computer. If I use a coupler to connect them, you can hear the audio. Sounds fine. But what happens if we add another 6 feet? So I'll add a coupler here, add our 6-foot cable to the two 10-foot cables. So now we have 26 feet. Still sounds fine. Now another 6-foot cable. So this will be right at the limit of 32 feet of cable. So there's a 10-foot cable running from the CD player to that coupler. There's a 6-foot cable, another coupler, another 6-foot cable, another coupler, and then the 10-foot cable going into the computer. So there's 32 feet of ordinary cheap RCA cables. But just because we're right at the limit of 32 feet doesn't mean we can try adding more. I have this 3-foot 5-inch cable. So add a coupler, add that to that, and plug that in. So that's 35 feet of cable. Another 3-foot cable. Another coupler. Still sounds fine. That's 38 feet of ordinary RCA cable. Here's a very, very thin 6-foot 9-inch cable. So this will put us well over 40 feet if this works. So I did the math, and as of right now, I have 42 feet, 2 inches of cable connecting the CD player to the computer, and I'm almost running out of couplers, so I figured I'd go rather crazy here and add 25 feet of this really cheap unshielded speaker cable. This is totally not the kind of cable you want to be using to connect your digital audio devices. Look how thin that is and how it's not even shielded. So let's see if this is going to work. I'm not going to uncoil it. And it's working. I only have one more coupler left. It's not even a proper coupler, it's actually a Y adapter. So I'm going to add another 7 feet of this really cheap unshielded speaker cable. See if that still works. Because I'm literally out of cable at this point. And that's still working. So right now I have a total of 74 feet 2 inches or 22.6 meters of the cheapest, crappiest RCA cables and unshielded speaker cables connected between the CD player and the computer. And if the digital audio can get through all this and still sound fine, I don't think you need to worry about spending over $300 on a single digital audio cable. I just realized I have another 25 feet of RCA cable. This is stereo cable, but I'm going to only use one side of it. So if this works when I add it, it'll put us just under 100 feet of this cable between the CD player and the computer. Another Y cable jury-rigged as an adapter. I'll use the red one. Let's see if this works. Yes, it does. I found another Y adapter so we can use the other half of this cable as another segment. See if it still works. What I have to do is actually connect the output of the red into the black and then the black into here. And it's not working. We finally reached our limit. Let me just double check. This is going out into the red. Red is going into the black. Black is going into the rest of the cabling. I can hear some pops, but that's about it. It's trying. You hear that? It's trying to come through. Let me remove this section, see if it comes through. In fact, let me. This is a rather poor quality Y adapter. Well, that certainly sounds distorted. Sounds like a Commodore 64. That's funny. So I guess they're right after all. It does distort the sound, just not in the way you were expecting. Okay, let me try removing a few more segments here. Take care of this one here. This gray cable is actually from 1972. I got it out of the original Radio Shack packaging. It had the 1972 date code on it. Still sounds distorted. Okay, let me try removing another section here. Still distorted. Alright. Try removing this section. I think it's starting to sound a little better, but you can still hear a lot of distortion. So what's left? 10 feet, 10 feet, 25 feet, 50 feet. So that's 75, 85, 95, plus this, which is 6 feet 9 inches. So still over 100 feet. Try removing this section. See if that finally clears it up. Nope. Maybe this cable's bad. I don't know. Try removing this cable. Starting to get a little better, I think. So we have 10 feet, 10 feet, and 50 feet. Alright, I'll have to just go to the black part. That sounds fine. We got the red part. Sounds fine. So if I go, let me get a regular coupler here, into the red, out of the red, into the black, out of the black. Sounds distorted. Let me try the other way. Go into the black, out of the black, into the red, and into the computer. Still sounds distorted. So that's certainly what a crappy, poor quality digital audio cable sounds like. I'm sure that's not what you were expecting. So I'll give you a direct hookup into the camcorder of how this crappy digital audio cable actually sounds. So you're certainly free to continue buying those expensive digital audio cables if you want to, but if our digital audio could make it through all that and still sound perfect, and then when we added this, it suddenly started sounding like a Commodore 64, I think we've proven that bits is bits. This time I decided to go for a slightly different experiment to show the effect of a degraded digital audio cable. So I pulled out my Philips DCC recorder and I have it in recording pause mode. So it's not actually recording the tape, so I'm really just using it as a DAC to use its coaxial digital input, which you can see that I've selected there, to the headphone jack. So it's not running it through the codec that goes onto the tape, it's just a straight output from the DAC to the headphone jack. And the digital output of the CD player is running through this RCA to 3.5mm adapter, and then that cable runs around the front here to this variable attenuator. It's just an inline volume control with a thumb wheel on it, and the output of the inline volume control is connected to a 3.5mm to RCA adapter cable, which is plugged into the coaxial digital input of the DCC recorder. And then you can see right now it's all the way up. If I turn it down past a certain point, below about halfway, that starts flashing and it says check digital input. If I bring it back up, it starts playing again. So there is a breaking point where it refuses to recognize the digital input. But the question is there any degradation of the audio before it gets to that breaking point? So I'll give you a direct hookup into the camcorder so you can listen for yourself. The CD I will be playing is Echo Movement in the Ocean, track number 5, which is All I Can. This is a New Jersey group. This is from 2009.
Holding on to all I can, can't try to take that away. I'll never win if I never play. I'm holding on to all I can, and I listen to Bob.
So I don't know about you, but I couldn't hear any degradation or strange noises or anything until it just cut out. This is probably more indicative of what actual consumer hi-fi components would deal with coaxial digital signals rather than the sound card in that computer. It just cuts out, that's it. There's no strange behavior, just all or nothing. So I have the same setup with the variable inline volume control connected to the digital input in my computer, and turns out there is a difference. I'm sure you can hear it just through the headphones. It does have somewhat of a degradation. You can hear that crackling and distortion until it cuts out. So I'll give you a sample of how this sounds.
I say, oh, oh. I know that I'm gonna get by. I say, oh, oh. The sky. Crying, I'll keep it to myself when my mind's sighing, but I still gotta show my hands.
It's worth noting though that this setup here with the input into the computer, I can only get it down to about 2/3 on this control before it cuts out, whereas with the Philips DCC recorder I was able to get slightly below halfway on this volume control before it would cut out. So the DCC recorder has a better sensitivity digital input than this. So if I did the same experiment with all those crazy lengths of cables, I'm sure I would be able to get even longer lengths if I used the DCC recorder's digital input instead of the computer's digital input. So that's about it for this video. It's just something I quickly thought up using the equipment I have on hand and a whole bunch of cheap cables in my junk bin. But don't worry, there's a lot more where this comes from in terms of these audiophile companies trying to sell you expensive cables. For example, Premier XL USB cables for $169 with separate power and signal connectors. And also audiophile Ethernet cables, believe it or not. So stay tuned, there may be more videos about those in the future.